I have a confession to make. When I write, I want to inspire you. I want to take everything that I'm drawn to and weave it into a story that touches your heart, your fears, and your hopes. Every story that I write has a little bit of me in it. I don't always succeed. Sometimes I fall into the trap of writing what's trending or what other people like. And these are usually the stories that I give up on or I put away and I never finish. And this is because I'm not connected to it. I'm not inspired by the story myself because I was just following a trend. And if I'm not inspired by it, then how can I hope to inspire you? So I don't know if you can relate to that, if you have had stories that kind of feel flat. And if that's the case, the problem might not be you or your skills. It might just be that you're not really following the emotional breadcrumbs that lead to the most powerful ideas that you have. So today I want to talk about why it's important for you to write about things that inspire you so that you can in turn inspire your readers. Sometimes inspiration is more important than technique. So let's talk about that today.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Amante channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Amante. I'm a women's fiction author who is here on Fridays to share the things that she knows, hoping that it'll help you as well, help you think. And today, it's going to be about inspiration that I want to talk about. So every writer has a spark, something that you can't stop thinking about. It might be a theme. It might be a character that has just entered your mind and won't go away. It could be an image. And a lot of times we just ignore that. We don't pay attention to it, or we want it to go away because maybe it's just something that's too vulnerable. It's an idea that we connect to too deeply, and we don't really want to write about that. We don't want to open up our hearts and write something that we're really, really close to, because if it's rejected, it's going to be very painful. We don't want to be too personal. We don't want to be too vulnerable. And maybe we don't really want to be strange or odd to our readers who may think like, why in the world are you writing about that? Why would you even think of that? But I want to say that sometimes those ideas, those things that you think about, that you want to write about, but you don't want to write about, are really the most powerful. They hold the power to create a shift in the way people perceive things and make someone stop and see the world differently. Yes, they might see it the way you see it, and that might be exactly what they need. And then I also want to say that inspiration is contagious. So when you write about something that moves you, something that makes you cry, or something that makes you laugh, something that you defend, an idea that you defend, even if other people don't agree with it or can't really understand why it's important to you, it gives your readers a piece of yourself that's real and raw. And that honesty is important because it breaks through all the noise and it helps people really connect to you and to your stories emotionally and deeply. So if you want to inspire readers, if you want to give your readers something special that they can take away, then you have to stop chasing what you think readers want, and pay attention to the themes and the ideas that you really can't ignore, the ones that are important to you. So think about any story that feels urgent for you to tell, something that you feel the world needs to hear. Think about a truth that really won't leave you alone, because that's where your most meaningful work is probably going to lie. If your story doesn't breathe with life, with your life, then readers can sense that. They can sense that this is a hollow story, that you're not really connected to it, that you don't really care about it, that you're just going through the motions, that you're creating these characters that could be kind of generic, that maybe you've read about somewhere else, or you've seen on TV, and they can sense that you're not really writing the story with conviction. You're just writing a story that you think is popular or that people will like. And sadly, the stories that really are inspiring to people, that people really love and can't forget, are not the ones that they've seen a million times. It comes from writers who took a chance and they wrote something different that they hadn't seen before, something that they thought of themselves and that maybe was a little weird, but they wrote it anyways. The whole Harry Potter series, Nothing like that had been done before. And it became a sensation. Why? Because it was different. Because the author said, I'm going to write this. Hopefully somebody likes it, but if they don't, they don't, right? So she took a chance and she wrote something different, and it inspired a lot of people, inspired a whole amusement park. It did all kinds of wonderful things because it was something that was personal and something that the author used her imagination and her creativity to create, and it was like nothing else that was out there. So the first thing I want you to do then is to follow your emotional breadcrumbs. Okay, what is that? So these are the themes and the questions and the ideas that you have that come from your background, from your history. So it could be, a story of redemption. It could be maybe the memories of your childhood home and the sounds that you used to hear and the people you used to live around that place. Maybe there are small acts of kindness that you've noticed that somebody does or somebody participates in. These are emotional breadcrumbs. They point to something that's important to you. If you remember it and you remember the person, then that means something to you and there's a story there. So what you want to do is you want to follow these little breadcrumbs and say, okay, well, I remember this really kind person that worked at this, doctor's office, and she was so kind to everyone and always had a smile on her face. And then one day I went there and they told me that she had died of cancer, and I was so shocked because she was always happy. She never looked sick, she never looked like she was suffering, and she was just such a kind person. And I was drawn to her, and I realized now that she's not there that I'm going to actually miss her, right? That's a breadcrumb where it was important to you and you want to maybe pursue that. So if we take an example, Tolkien's, right? He wasn't really writing about hobbits when he wrote the Lord of the Rings. It was a story about the devastation of war, the fragility of hope, and the enduring fight against despair. All these things really touched him as a soldier and a scholar, and he was able to take all those things, all those memories, all those feelings, and transfer them to his book. So yeah, fantasy fans like the book because of that, but it's deeper than that because the emotions and the breadcrumbs that he followed are all woven into the story. Okay, so the first thing then is follow those breadcrumbs. The second thing is to be vulnerable, because vulnerability really is power. If you want to touch someone, if you want to inspire someone, if you want to make a difference with your story in someone's life, then you have to open yourself up and be okay with being vulnerable. We tend to shy away from being too personal or too vulnerable with our stories. We don't really want to let a bunch of strangers that we don't know into our hearts and into our minds, but yet we want to connect with readers. Well, we have to choose. We can't do both. We can't stay distanced from readers and the strangers that are out there reading our books, but also want to have a connection with them. You can't do both. You have to decide, what do you want to do? And if you want to connect with readers, if you want readers to connect with your stories, then you have to be willing to open yourself up to them. Okay? Because vulnerability is the key to good writing. When you write about your fears, about things that unsettle you, when you risk being seen by other people, then yeah, you're going to risk, right? You're going to risk opening yourself up, opening your heart up, and maybe being laughed at, maybe being hurt. But that's really exactly what it takes to let readers in. Think of the stories that have changed you. Chances are that they touched you emotionally, that they weren't just safe, generic stories. They were brave, and in those stories, the authors said, this is what I believe, this is what I think, this is what I hope, and this is what I feel. Then if you can do that, you're going to be doing more than just entertaining readers, because readers want more than just entertainment. They want to feel a connection to you. They want to feel less alone. They want that vulnerability because they want to know that somebody else understands them, that exactly what they're feeling is what you're writing about in your story. Now, this doesn't mean that you're writing about yourself completely, right? You might not identify with every single one of your characters. You might have an evil villain and say, well, I don't identify with that character at all. Like, I'm nothing like that. But it might be something that you fear. It might be that that villain might represent something that is horrific to you. And that is something that you feel, right? So that would actually help you to write the perfect villain. If you're like, well, this would be the most horrible thing that I could think of. And this is who this villain is. This is who this person is. So be vulnerable, open yourself up, and share that. Create characters that represent both the positive, the wonderful parts, the dreams, the hopes that you have, and also the fears and the despair that you have. Okay, and the next thing to remember if you're wanting to write really great books that inspire others and make people feel is that the techniques that you learn as an author are important, but they are the vessel, they are not the source. Okay. What does that mean? Yes, you want to learn the rules of writing. The reason I make these videos, the reason I have blogs where I write about writing is because the techniques and craft is important. You want to learn how to create great characters, how to create tension, how to plot in a way that draws your reader in. But those are techniques. You can learn those and you can become really good at those. But they're not the source of a good story. It's just the techniques. It's just the shape, the grammar, all of that is not the story. So let me just tell you a brief little story. So I remember when I was teaching elementary school and I was teaching fourth grade. And this was just at the start of the internet. So there was, I think, Yahoo groups, and I was teaching my students about the ocean. And I thought a really great activity and something that would be really fun was there was something called the Bach Ocean Challenge, where yachts would from around the world would race. And again, there were people from different countries, right? And they all ended, I think it was in Cape Town. So each one of the students chose a sailor, and a lot of, to be honest, they're fourth graders, right? So they chose the yacht they thought looked cute or, had a great design or something. They liked the color. So they had no idea who they were choosing, but they chose different sailors. And then things would happen to these sailors along the way. I had a huge map on my wall in my classroom and little flags, that they would put up there. And so once a week or once every few days, we were able to log on to to Yahoo, and it was again very hard. Sometimes we couldn't get a connection, or sometimes the sailors couldn't get a connection, and they could go and see where their sailor was. Were they progressing? Had they had any problems? And the sailors would make a little log of what they've seen or what had happened. If they had some, that the sail had torn, or they'd had some kind of tragic problem where they couldn't continue the race. But anyhow, the students followed their sailor and to see like who would win. And they got to learn things about wind and about the ocean and the currents and the beautiful locations around the earth where the sailors stopped and refueled and got food. But what ended up happening near the end is that the students learned, right, that it didn't really matter how beautiful the yachts were, or, who the sailor was or how cool he was. What really mattered was the wind. Could they catch the wind and move the yacht, right? So without the sails, without the wind, they had no hope of winning. So even the most beautiful yachts, when the wind died, they were done. They were stuck. They couldn't move. Their team fell behind, and it was impossible for them to catch up. So your inspiration, your why of writing the story, that's your win. Without it, even the most polished, really excellently written, you understand your craft. If you don't have an inspiring reason to write your story, if you don't have something that moves you, you have no wind. You have nothing that's going to push you forward and help you to complete and to write a really moving story. If you've ever read Maya Angelou's writing, she had simple sentences, okay, but they were really, really moving. So it doesn't matter how wonderful your prose is or how great your sentences are, if there isn't a story there, if there isn't something moving you to write the story. So how do you write then these stories that move you? How do you do that? Well, it's easier than you think, right? So the first thing you want to do is notice what interests you. What are you obsessed by? What is it that you think about all the time? What are some recurring images or themes or questions that you have? Are there daydreams or things you write about in your journal? Those are the things that are pointing you towards a story, towards something that you need to tell. The second thing is to ask yourself what scares you. Sometimes the most impactful writing is going to come from things that you're afraid of. So what if something happened, right? A lot of parents, we're afraid that something's going to happen to our children. We're afraid that we're not going to, we're going to have a financial issue and we're not going to be able to take care of our family. So what are the things that frighten you that could make a really good story? The third thing is just to write from curiosity. What are you curious about? What are you fascinated by? What would you like to know more about? As long as you're interested in something, you're going to want to write about it. And then the last thing is to write about things that shaped you. So we all have a past. We all have things that, that brought us to today, that shaped us into the people that we are today. What are those things? And could some of those moments that you experienced in the past create a good story? Maybe they helped you see the world differently and they would help someone else see the world differently. So a few years ago, met a new friend. I met her on Facebook, and then I got to meet her in person and we got to talking, and since we've become friends, and she wrote a memoir. The name of her memoir is Tales of an Inland Empire Girl, and her name is Juanita Mance. Great author, great book. But I absolutely loved her book. And why did I love it? Well, it's a memoir and she writes about the past. She writes about times that she spent close to where I live. And most of the stories take place in the 1980s, again, when I was, a young teenager. And so to me, they were interesting. They were memories that she had, but I could connect with. And what makes the book so special is, well, she was very vulnerable. She talked about things that were painful to her, things that scared her, moments that shaped her life and made her into who she is today. So I created a very authentic book. When you read her book, you feel like you know her because she is being very, very open and vulnerable and telling you the stories, again, that made an impact on her life. So you don't want to hold back as an author. You want to invite your readers in, whether you're a memoir writer or whether you're a fiction author, into your stories. In fact, I interviewed Juanita, so I will add a link below so that you can listen to the interview, and she can tell you a little bit more about her books and how she writes. And again, I absolutely recommend her book because it's everything that I'm talking about here. It's inspiring and it's authentic. So really the reason I'm making this video is because I think that, writing a book that touches other people is a gift. It's a gift to your reader, and it's also a gift to yourself because you're being honest with yourself and you're creating a story that you love and that your readers can love. So what I'm imploring you to do, what I'm also reminding myself to do, is to follow those breadcrumbs, follow the things that move you. When you do that, your stories become more than just words on a page. They become a mirror for other people to actually see themselves in your stories. Readers aren't going to just walk away entertained. Yes, they may be entertained, but they're also going to walk away changed. To me, the highest calling of a writer is not just to entertain. Yes, we want to entertain. We want to tell a good story, but it's also to inspire other people to look at their lives differently, to try different things, to go on journeys, to look at life from different perspectives. So if we can do that, I think that we are hugely successful, whether we sell 10 books or whether we sell 10,000 or whether we sell 1,000,000 books. It doesn't matter as long as our stories mean something to other people and the people that read your stories. But the only way that you're going to do that is if you inspire yourself first. So this week, I want you to write a story that moves you, a story that you've been wanting to write, that maybe you were afraid to write, but a story that's been waiting to be told, and only by you. So I hope you do that. And let me know what you think. Let me know if you do it. And hit the like button, hit the share button. So come back next week where I will have another tip that will hopefully help you write your book. See you then.